Good morning, students. Welcome back again. Today we are going to discuss chapter number 2 of English, that is The Lost Spring, written by Annie's Jung. Right? We have already discussed chapter number 1 when the school was on a regular basis. We are going to discuss chapter number 2 today. Right? Before we begin, I'll give you a short summary of this chapter. What is this chapter? Alright? The name of the chapter is The Lost Spring. Stories of Stolen Childhood. From this sentence, you will be able to understand what kind of chapter it would be, or what would be the story of the chapter. Stories of Stolen Childhood. Childhood is one of the most important or the most beautiful phase of our life. Right? But in this chapter, the writer, that is Annie's Jung, talks about certain children, right, who are forced to work, to do the labor work rather than enjoy their childhood moments. This chapter is divided into two stories. Right? We are going to discuss one story today and the one story in the other session. Right? So I'll made certain summary of this chapter so it would be easy for you to understand the whole chapter. Right? Try to understand the summary so that you can remember the chapter in the terms of story. Right? The story Lost Spring deals with the deplorable condition of poor children who gets forced to miss the simple, joyful moments of childhood because of their economic conditions. That is the situation. That is what the writer tries to say in this particular chapter. Right? In spite of their enjoying simple, joyful moments of their childhood, they are forced to work. They are forced to work because of their economic conditions. These children are not given the opportunity of schooling. They are being forced by their parents, or their situation is such like that they are not given the opportunity of schooling and are forced to start working at the early phase of their life. This is the summary of this chapter. That is why the name of the chapter is The Lost Spring. Something has been lost. What has been lost? Simple, joyful moments of childhood. That has been lost in this chapter. That is what the writer tries to explain in this story. Right? The writer personally have encountered with this kind of children, have talked with them, and they have understood and they have shared their economic conditions, right, with this writer. And that is what the writer describes in this chapter. That is about chapter number 2, that is The Lost Spring. Right? Again, there are two stories in this chapter. We are going to discuss one story today and the other story in the next session. Right? We have already discussed chapter number 1 when the school was on regular basis. Right? With the exercise also. We are starting with chapter number 2. Take out your textbook, page number 13. The Lost Spring. See, the first paragraph about the author. Annie's Jung, that is in 1964, was born in Rourkela and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. Right? She was from Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. The parents of Annie Jung were writers. Right? Annie's Jung began her career as a writer in India. She had begun an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad, and has authored several books. The following is an excerpt from her book titled The Lost Spring. stories of stolen childhood. That is what we are going to discuss. Here, she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemns these children to a life of exploitation. To a life of exploitation. Right? The children are being exploited because of their socio-economic conditions or because of the background of their family. In spite of having their childhood, in spite of enjoying those moments, right, going to school, free full life, all that things, rather than that they are being forced to do the work, the labor work. That is what she personally gets the experience, talks with those kind of children, and then writes in the form of a story. Right? We are going to discuss part 1 of this story. See, it has been given. Sometimes I find a rupee in a garbage. Sometimes I find a rupee in a garbage. You know who is this? A rag picker. Right? A person, who collects the dust from the society. Right? They are known as the rag pickers. And sometimes they find a rupee, 2 rupee or a 10 rupees note, and that is their life. That is their life. What does the writer say? What does the writer feels about those kind of children? Look into the textbook. Why do you do this? I ask Sahib, whom I encounter every morning, scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. The author tries to ask a question to that particular boy. Why do you do this? Right? And the name of that boy is Sahib. The name of that boy is Sahib, whom the author encounters every morning. Right? For gold in the garbage. What is the gold for that boy? In the garbage or in the dust? To find a rupee or a 10 rupees note. That is a gold for him for the day itself. And he finds every day certain things, maybe rupee, 2 rupees or 10 rupees. And that is what Sahib considered it as a gold. Look at the poor condition of that child who finds a gold when he finds a 10 rupee note in the garbage. That is the condition of that child. In spite of living a beautiful life in his childhood, in spite of going to school, in spite of enjoying those days with friends, he is collecting 5 rupees or 10 rupees or finding such kind of notes in the garbage. And that is what the author encounters every day, every morning. Right? And the author asks, why do you do this? Right? Next. Sahib left his home long ago. She amidst means being surrounded by something. Right? The green field of Dhaka. Dhaka is a place close to Bangladesh. His home is not even a distant memory. He does not remember his home, where actually he is from, where actually he stayed, what is his hometown, what is the image of the house. He does not remember anything. That is his life. Right? His home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him, that's why they left. There were many storms. Storms means not that storms which are seen in the rainy seasons. Storms means the condition of the family which is very critical and which forced them to move from that place to the other place, from the other place to some other place. They kept on roaming and roaming to different places. So that boy even does not remember what is his actual home. Look at the poverty that he faces. Look at the physical and the mental condition that a child lives in. He lives his life in a garbage. right? It is very easy to look at those kind of children and talk about them. But if someone tells us to spend the day with that child for half an hour, it is next to impossible, because of the smell, because of the body odor that comes from their body. We cannot even stand next to them, but that is their life. Sometimes we feel that we are very lucky to have a good house, to have good parents, to have good relatives. This kind of children does not think of all these levels. This kind of children does not have any kind of sense, any kind of feeling towards humanity. They are totally different from us. They are humans, but the condition have made their mind think in a different manner. This is the condition of that boy, right? And he enjoys when he finds a rupee or a 10 rupee note in that garbage. He considered it as a gold for that day. That I found 10 rupees from the garbage, from someone's pocket, or from someone's, waste thrown into that particular box. That is his luck. That is what he favors or consider it as a gold. Can we even put our hand in the garbage? It is very difficult. Their life is over there. They spend the whole of their life in that garbage. We need to think from this point of view. That is what the writer is trying to explain in this story. Right? Next. There were many storms that swept away their fields and home, his mother tells him. That is why they left, looking for gold in a big city where he now lives. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. That is what the boy replies. I have no education, I don't know anything, so I have nothing to do. So what is the only thing that he can do? He can find something from somewhere. Right? That is his only thing that he can do, and that is what the situation of his family is. Go to school, I say glibly, that is in a simple manner, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. You are telling to that particular boy to go to school. Will that boy understand in a simple language what school life is, what education is? What kind of joy, what kind of, simple joyful moments that are being, to be enjoyed in a childhood in that school. Can he understand all these things? No. So the writer tries to say in a very simple manner that you need to go to school. But that boy doesn't understand anything, because he have no idea, right? He has no idea what school is, what education is. His only life, his only joyful moment is to find something from the garbage. That is what he enjoys. That is his life. We are educated, and when we look at those kind of children, we understand, oh, what a poor life it is. But that is a joy for that child, because he doesn't understand what life actually it is. This is the vast thinking difference between that child and between us. So the writer is educated over here. Even her parents are, writers. So she tries to tell to that boy that you need to go to school. Now what does the boy reply? See? There is no school in my neighborhood. When they'll build one, I'll go. That is what the boy replies. There is no school in my neighborhood. That means in his surroundings. What would be his surroundings? A kind of a surroundings of his people, or his kind of people. Right? Where all the people, poor people living in that particular area. Right? That is his surroundings, that is his neighborhood. So he replied that I do not have any kind of school in my neighborhood. When they'll build one, I'll go. That is what he replies. Now what does the writer reply? See, if I start a school, will you come? I ask half joking. Yes, He says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me. After a few days later, the boy was running up to him. Now, what does the boy ask? Is your school ready? That is what the boy asked to the writer. Is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. But promises like mine abound in each and every corner of his bleak world. Bleak world means exposed world. The writer said it half jokingly, that if I build a school, will you come to my school? The boy was very serious and he said that if you build one, I'll definitely come to your school. And after a few days, what happens? The boy comes and asks the questions to the writer. Is your school ready? So what does the writer reply? It takes time to build a school. And she felt embarrassed that whatever she said in a half joking manner, the boy took it very seriously and came with an positive attitude that if the school is ready, I am ready to join the school. This is the situation. This is what those kind of people think, right? After months of knowing him, I asked him his name, Sahib-e-Alam. That was the full name of that boy, Sahib-e-Alam. He announces. He does not know what it means. If he knew, it means Lord of the Universe. The name of the meaning is Lord of the Universe, and he doesn't know the actual meaning of his name. He would have a hard time believing it. If the writer tries to explain the meaning of his name, it would be very hard for that boy to believe that actually he is the Lord of the Universe. If he might be the Lord of the Universe, he would like to do or fulfill all his dreams. But he is able to fulfill all his dreams? No, actually not, because he doesn't understand what is this name and what is the name of the meaning. So it becomes very difficult for the writer to make him understand what is the actual meaning of your name. We are educated, we know what the situation is and what is the meaning of his name, but it is very difficult to explain to that boy because he doesn't understand the meaning of his name, what actually it is. He would have a hard time believing it, unaware of what his name represents. He roams the street with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appears like the morning birds and disappears at noon. Every morning they get together to find something from the garbage, and every noon everyone disappears. Over the months I have come to recognize each of them. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I asked one. Again there was one another boy, so the writer asked, why aren't you wearing chappals? That means they were foot naked, right? They did not even have the chappals to wear. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. So this is the condition. My mother did not bring it down. The boy tries to cover the economic conditions of his family. My mother denied me, or my mother did not told me to bring down from the shelf, so I came naked. I did not wear any kind of chappals. That is what the boy replies. Barefooting, right? This is what the boy tries to hide the condition of his own family. Actually he did not have enough money to buy a chappal from the market, to buy a pair of chappals from the market. That is the reality. But he answers in a very simple manner that from the shelf, right? My mother did not bring it down, so I came barefooted. That is what the boy replies. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another. See, there is one another boy who tells that even if her mother gave her the chappals, the pair of chappals, this boy would throw to some other place. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another, who is wearing shoes that do not match. Who is wearing shoes that do not match. Right? There is one third boy who comments on the second boy, right? And when the writer looks at the third boy, he is wearing a shoe which is not matching. Look at the critical situation of that boy, right? I want shoes, says the third boy, who has never owned a pair all his life. Right? He might be 8, 10, 12 years old. The age is not mentioned over here, but as they are, rack because they are finding something from the garbage, right? They might be at least 8 to 10 years of his childhood, right? During the 10 years of their life, let us take it as an example, 10 years might be, right? During the 10 years of their life, they did not have a single pair of shoes. This is the critical condition. So that third boy comments that I actually want a pair of shoes. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities or on village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot. So it is not about lack of money. The writer tries to understand the situation. They are not even that much poor that they cannot buy a pair of shoe. Right? But it is actually the tradition, it is actually the belief or the mentality of those kind of people that we are poor, we are rag pickers, we are not allowed to wear good clothes, we are not allowed to wear chappals and shoes, we need to move barefooted, then only we are considered poor. If you are going to wear chappals, if you are going to wear shoes, no one is considered, is going to consider us as a rag picker or as a particular kind of a person who is, collecting something from the garbage. This is the situation. So it becomes the tradition or the mentality of those kind of people living in that society. This is the situation. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. I wonder if this only is an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. I remember a story. A man from Udupi. This is what the author is remembering now. A story that is a man from Udupi once told me as a young boy he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in the air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived painting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Right? Here, the author tries to remember a story from Udupi. There was one boy, right, who used to go to that school, which was, on the way, there was one old temple where his father was a priest, right, and he would stop there at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes, right. His father was a priest in that temple, and when that boy used to pass through that particular temple because he was going to school, he always used to stop over there and pray for a pair of shoes. Right? He remembers this thing. Right? The author remembers each and everything when he is, conversation that is going on between those particular children who does not have a pair of shoes. Right? This is what he remembers as a part of the story when he is talking presently with those children. He remembers his childhood, remembers his past, that there was one story that I remember when I was in Udupi. So that boy, when he used to go to school, he always stood over there and prayed that I want a pair of shoes. Right? And 30 years later, the author visited to that place. Right? I visited the town and the temple, which was now drowned in the air of desolation. That was completely changed. In the backyard where lived the new priest. After 30 years, obviously the priest is going to change. Right? It keeps on changing. So there was one new priest who was serving in that temple. There were red and white plastic chairs. After 30 years, you see there might be many changes in the temple, right? So the author visited to that place, right, after 30 years, and when he saw everything was changed. And there was a young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived painting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered means the author remembered the prayer that another boy made to the goddess, that I want a pair of shoes. I want a pair of shoes. The author is presently visiting over there after 30 years, right? And when he finds that boy, the boy is not over there. There is some other boy. There is some other priest, right? And he remembers all that things what the previous boy said, whose father was a priest. See, try to understand. It is almost after 30 years. Right? It is almost after 30 years. Right? The author is visiting again to that place. And when the author visits to that place, there is a new priest and there is a new boy. And when he sees that new priest and new boy, he remembers the old priest and old boy. That old boy who used to pray at that temple that I want a pair of shoes. And that is what the author is looking at, that present boy and the new priest, that he is wearing a pair of shoes. And he recalls what he, had a memory of that old boy and that old priest. And this is what she recalls. And why does she recalls? Because presently that author is talking with the 3 to 4 children who are rag pickers, or who are collecting some amount of money from the dust or from the particular waste. And that is what she remembers. She goes back 30 years back. And she remembers the things. Right? Try to understand this way so it would be easy for you to understand. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer. See, I remembered the prayer of the another boy that had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess has granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of priest now wore shoes. See, 30 years there is a difference. Before 30 years back, the son of the priest did not have that enough money to buy a pair of shoe. And after 30 years, the new priest and the new boy had that power to buy a pair of shoe. What does that mean? That means the prayers were accepted by the goddess. During that 30 years, they became so financially strong. Who? The priest and the boy. That his father, that is the priest, would allow him to buy a new pair of shoe. To buy a new pair of shoe. That means the goddess to whom the boy prayed actually were being answered in the form by giving a pair of shoes. By giving a pair of shoes. Right? The goddess has granted his prayer. Whose prayer? 30 years before the boy who actually prayed. 30 years before the boy who actually prayed was being granted by the goddess after 30 years. That means the new priest and the boy who were there were financially strong to buy a pair of shoes. And that is what the writer goes over there and finds the differences between a 30 years gap. A priest was 30 years above, that means before 30 years back with a boy, and a priest after 30 years with a boy. She finds the difference between two priests and two boys. Everything was changed. Everything was changed. This is what it is in the story. And presently she is talking with those children. She is talking with those children. Right? I hope the concept is clear. Right? But many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remain shoeless. Now she comes in the present condition, right? She recalls all that things, but still she, finds the difference between that boy and this 3 to 4 particular boy who were rag pickers. That what is the condition? See, every condition is changing. At that point of time, 30 years back, the priest and the son did not have enough money to buy a pair of shoe, and after 30 years the financial condition is strong. The priest and the particular boy had pair of shoes, but in spite of 30 years also, These boys, who boys? The rag pickers. 30 years, 50 years, 100 years down the line, the standard of living will always remain the same. That is what she finds the difference. Right? In spite of many years, their standard of living would be the same. Old clothes, no chappals, no pair of shoes, just like that. No difference in the way they look, no difference in the way they wear clothes, they wear the shoes, nothing, as it is. This is just like it. And that is what she finds the difference. Right? Next, what it says. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri. Now the author is again, moving back to another place, that is Simapuri. A place of periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it. Metaphorically, those who live here are squatters who come from Bangladesh back in 1971. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin devoid of sewage, drainage or running water live 10,000 rag pickers. A place in Delhi, that is Simapuri. This is where all kind of these people, that is the rag pickers, stay over there. There is a running waste of water going through that, flowing through that area, right? And there are not 1, 2 or 1,000, but 10,000 people living over there. What kind of people? The people who came from Bangladesh. In 1971, they ran away from there and came to this place and settled in Simapuri, which is the lowest area to stay. All kind of dirtness, all kind of, you cannot even stand over there. There are 10,000 rag pickers who live in that society. That is what the author recalls. It is still the same. At one point of time, it was not a part of Delhi. Now it is. Why? Because the number of people have increased. The number of people have increased, and still that area is one of the backward area of the society. That is what has been mentioned in the textbook. Right? There are 10,000 rag pickers who live in that area. They have lived there for more than 30 years. These 3 to 4 children, right, are living in that area more than 30 years without an identity. Without an identity, without permits, but with a ration card that get their names on voter list and enables them to buy the grains. What is their actual identity? No one knows. The only identity they have is a ration card, right, through which they can get certain kind of food grains so that they can survive. No actual or legal identity. This is the condition. In spite of living this sentence, simple joyful moments of their childhood, right, this is the current situation. That is what we are looking. Food is more important for survival than an identity. That is what they think. Food is much more important for us rather than our own identity. Right? If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, that without an empty stomach, right, we would rather live here than in the field that gave us no grain. What was their hometown? Bangladesh, Dhaka. There was nothing available over there. So in spite of living there and finding nothing, we would be very happy to find something from the garbage and feed ourselves and our family and get a good night's sleep. So it would be rather good to live in Simapuri rather to live in our hometown where there is nothing, because everything is destroyed because of the storm. Storm means a kind of physical and a mental storm that becomes very difficult to live over there. So the boy tries to say, rather than living in our hometown, finding nothing, it's very good to live in Simapuri, finding something from the garbage and feeding ourselves and our family. This is what the boy replies. That is why he says that, food is more important rather than identity. If at the end of the day, we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that give us no grains, says a group of women in tattered saris when I ask them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Whenever they find food, they pitch their tents, they become transist homes. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival, and survivals in Simapuri means rat picking. The only business in Simapuri is rat picking, nothing else. If you want to stay in Simapuri, if you want to survive, you need to find something from the garbage so that you can survive. Maybe sometimes rupee or maybe even sometimes food. Imagine the people who are throwing waste, they are finding the food and finding the money from such places and eating those food. How miserable and pathetic the life of their children or their family would be. But that is the only means of survival if you want to live in Simapuri. That is what the ladies, that means might be the mothers of those children say, that this is our life. If we want to survive, we need to live like this. Then only we can survive and we can live in Simapuri. This is the condition, right? Next. And even the children are becoming partners in the survival. And survival in Simapuri means rat picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Through many years, now we have become experts, in finding all these things, finding some things from the particular packages or from the dust that has been thrown by the good people living in the society. Now we are very artistic in finding all these things. Garbage to them is gold. That is what they consider. The waste or the garbage that they find, right? That is a gold for them. It is their daily bread. Bread, a roof over their heads. Even if it is leaking roof, right? If they find something and when they'll eat, at least they'll be satisfied that today we got this kind of food. Today that we got 5 rupees or 10 rupees. Right? So at least it would be a means of survival for those kind of people. But for a child, it is even more. It becomes very important for a child to find certain things for their own survival. That is the life in Simapuri is. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. That is what the boy is saying. See, Sahib says, his eyes lightening up. When you can't find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, silver coin means a kind of a rupee, the size of the coin that is always silver in nature, right? When you can't find a silver coin in a heap of a garbage, you don't stop scrowning, right? Still he finds, he digs everything from the waste or from the garbage and tries to find whether he can find 1, 2 or 10 rupee note. For their hope is finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents, right? They enjoy in the garbage, that is the dust or the waste. They find something, and until and unless they are satisfied, they keep on finding. So here the author tries to make them understand what is actually garbage is and what you are thinking garbage is. For children, garbage is a gold to them. It is a gold. Why it is a gold? Because they find a rupee or a 10 rupee note. So that is why they keep on scrouching. They keep on finding everything from the garbage. Can we do all these things? We cannot even, stand there for a few minutes. And they keep everything finding from them. This is the miserable life of that or of those children living in that area. This is the reality. We do not think on all these concepts because we are coming from a good background, we are coming from a good family, our parents are educated, so we never think from this point of view, right? But that is their life is, that is what their childhood is, that is what their enjoyment is. They don't understand the real meaning of the life, that is to get educated to become a good person. That is their life. That is what I have said in the starting of the chapter. The way that they look and see is totally different from the way and the look that we see. This is a big difference between a poor people and a rich people, or an well-educated or an well-settled people. The meaning of life is totally different. They live for today. They don't know what tomorrow is going to be, and we live in present and build our future. Vast difference, right? And that is what the author is experiencing when she is talking with all these boys and their mothers. See what it says. It seems that for children, garbage has a different meaning from what it means to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it is a means of survival. For the elders, it is a means of survival. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. One winter morning, there was, this boy, Sahib, was standing at the corner of the neighborhood club where he was watching two men playing tennis. I like the game, he hums. That is what he murmurs inside, that he likes the game. Content to watch it standing behind the fence, I go inside when no one is around, he admits. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that looks strange over his discolored shirts and shorts. Right? That is what the boy is looking. There were two people who were playing tennis, right? And he was standing at the corner of the fence and he enjoyed the game. And when there was no one inside, he used to go inside. And the gatekeeper allowed to swing through the gate. Small children have their habit, they hang on the gate and swing from here to there. This is what he used to do as a child, and that was his moment of enjoyment. He was wearing different color shoes which did not match his t-shirt or the pair of clothes that he was wearing, right? Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that looked strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me, he says in a manner of an explanation. Someone gave it, I don't know who gave it to me. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy, they are the shoes that someone has given to him. The shoes are of a rich boy that might be torn or that might be mismatched or miscolored, so that Sahib-e-Alam is wearing that shoes. And he actually doesn't know where it came from, because they are rag pickers. They find something all from the garbage, right? Discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true, right? It is a dream for that boy, that a pair of shoes, right? Looking for a pair of shoes in his entire life. When he finds that pair of a shoe, might be with a hole, it is a dream come true. For that rich boy, it is a waste. Why? Because there is a hole in a shoe. And for that boy, that means for the rag picker, that is the some collecting from the garbage, it is a dream coming true for that boy. Because in his entire life, he is not able to wear a pair of shoes. This is what the rich people and the rich standard livings of the society think, and this is what the poor people think. Both are humans, both have hearts, right? But the way of thinking is totally different. This is the sad reality of the Indian society. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching is so intently is out of his reach. He loved the game, he loved tennis, but that is out of his reach. He cannot play tennis. He does not have enough money to go into the club to play with those kind of people who are playing tennis. It is out of his reach. He cannot afford all these things. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall. Right? Now he is, working in a tea stall. The road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. He has been given 800 rupees, right? and with all the meals for that particular day. Does he like the job? That is what the author asks. I ask his face, directly face to face. I see has lost the carefree look. The boy has lost his carefree look. When he was finding something from the garbage as a rag picker, he was his own boss. Whatever he wanted, whatever he wished, he went to that place. He sat to that place. He roamed in the whole area or in the city. There was no one to stop him. Whatever he liked, he did. But now, as he is working in a tea stall, he is being paid 800 rupees. He is being given meal for the whole day. All his freedom has been lost. Whatever the owner of the tea stall says, he has to work like it. So he has lost his carefree look. That is what the boy says, in spite of getting good amount of money plus a meal. Right? He does not like that 800 rupees. He does not like the meal that he gets, because he wants to live his life in a carefree manner. But as he is bound to the tea owner or the owner of that shop, he is not able, to think or to, work as per his own thoughts, as per his own freedom thoughts. So the boy says that, so the author asks, does he like his job? I ask his face, and I see he has lost the carefree look. That is what the author experiences. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry. The steel canister, that means the canister in which there is tea, right, is much more heavier than the plastic bag that he used to keep on his back. He would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his. The bag was his. He can say proudly, whatever I found in that garbage, in this plastic bag, that is totally mine. But the canister that I am holding is not mine. It's of someone else. That is the freedom that he has lost. In spite of getting 800 rupees per day, a meal for a day, he has lost all his freedom, and he doesn't like to work over there. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. Sahib is no longer his own master. This is what the boy say, that I am no longer my own master. He lost his freedom. He loved to collect whatever he can from that garbage. But now, as he got to work in a particular tea stop as a labor, in spite of getting good amount of money and food, right, he lost his freedom. He loved to collect each and everything that was available in the garbage. It doesn't matter or bothered him whether it is a 1 rupee or 10 rupee. At least he enjoyed his life. But as he got the job, he lost his freedom. And now he says he is no longer his master. Right? This is what the story of Sahib-e-Alam is. This is what the author encounters with that boy, talks with that boy. I hope this story is clear. Right? I'm repeating it again. See what it says. The poor children who get forced to live or miss the simple joyful moments of childhood because of their economic condition. As because of his economic condition was poor, he was forced to do the labor work, right? The children are not given the opportunity of schooling and are forced to start working in their early phase of their life. This is what we have seen in the story. I hope the story is clear. I request the students to read this story once again from the textbook. So it would make your content stronger. It would make your understanding more better. Right? If you want, you can write down the summary. The story, that is part number 2, we are going to discuss in the next session. Thank you.